everyone, this is Jono and welcome to a new video series that I'm doing called Community Management Crib Notes. Now, the idea is pretty simple. In the world of community leadership and management, there is a wide variety of different topics that we can discuss. There's things such as how we track and measure our communities, how we build growth, how we build buzz and excitement about our campaigns and our projects, how we manage those projects and how we govern. In each of these videos I'm going to pick a topic such as that, and I'm going to share some of my takeaways and experiences that I've learned over the years. And the goal is to share them in a video so you folks can check those videos out and you can share your opinions and feedback and your experiences in the video comments too. Now, you can keep up to date with when these videos are coming out by subscribing to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/JonoBacon. You can click that lovely subscribe link up there. You can also keep up to date with my Twitter feed, which is twitter.com/JonoBacon. You should check out my blog at jonobacon.org as well. And many of the topics that I'm discussing here are also discussed in my book, The Art of Community, published by O'Reilly. You can find out more about that at artofcommunityonline.org and its Twitter feed at twitter.com/artofcommunity. I'm very glad that I've got all of those web addresses out of the way, because you know what? We can get started on the very first topic. So today I want to talk about conflict resolution. This is something that people ask me about all the time, and it's a very complex and challenging topic, and it can often be very emotionally charged. The question is pretty simple. You know, what do we do when we've got a situation where a couple of community members are just not getting on with each other? How do we deal with flame wars and arguments, and how do we deal with controversial community decisions that some parts of your community don't like? How do we resolve these issues and get people back to being happy and productive with each other? I think the first thing to clarify here in my mind is that, and some of you will be disappointed with this, is that I don't believe that there is a silver bullet when it comes to conflict resolution. I can't give you a set of steps that you can run through one by one that will resolve a conflict situation perfectly. I just don't believe that that exists. But I do believe that there are some factors that can be seen and learned inside of conflict resolution that we can learn from, and those factors can help us to understand how to resolve conflict in a sleeker and a smoother capacity. And I'm going to share a bunch of these things that I've learned over the years about conflict, so it can help you folks resolve your own conflicts in your own way. Now, the other thing is I want to get this conversation off on the right foot, in the sense that I've seen a lot of people conflate conflict and disputes in quite different ways. So let me give you an example. Imagine you've got two people who get on very, very well, but for some particular reason they're having an argument, they're having a spat. These two people may be colleagues or community members, and they're working on a project, or a decision's been made, or they feel like they've treated each other inappropriately, or whatever it might be, but they're involved in some kind of conflict. I would consider that not so much conflict, but a dispute. It's an isolated incident that you need to resolve. The way in which we handle those isolated incidents, in my mind, is quite different to how we handle longer standing conflict, such as two people who just have fundamental personality differences, who probably don't like each other, who feel like they agitate each other. To me, handling those situations is very different to the isolated incidents. So when you are brought into a situation, and often this happens where someone will ping you and say, can you help me with a particular, with something that's going on, these people are arguing or whatever it might be. First of all, evaluate whether it's a dispute or whether it's conflict, and that will help you to move forward on that. I think it's also useful to assess why people get involved in conflict and disputes. Some people will react to situations and start getting all fiery about it, and some people will just let it pass them by. And I think there's a bunch of different attributes that can help us to understand why. The first one, I think, is passionate people. Some people are just very, very passionate in the way they interact with people. I've been very fortunate to work with a bunch of these people, and these people are often very motivated and inspirational and enthusiastic, and they bang the drum about their beliefs and all that kind of good stuff. But But passion can often flow both ways. And while these folks, when they're happy, can be very passionate, when they're unhappy, they can be just as passionate, and that can sometimes either transcend into getting frustrated and starting to get involved in the conflict or a dispute, or it can frustrate other people and it will cause them to get involved in conflict or a dispute. Part of the reason why passionate people are often that way is because they have a very strong ethos around goals and values. They believe that their values are very true to them, and they're very strongly invested in those goals and values. And other people who are infringing on those goals and values can be taken very, very personally. Another component is how people communicate. Some people are just a lot more elegant at reacting to these situations than others. In the course of my career as a community manager, I've seen very, very contentious situations handled with ease and simplicity by some folks. They've just handled the situation in a calm and collected way. With other folks, I've seen them just get up in someone's face over the smallest, tiniest detail, because we each react to these situations in quite different ways. I'd encourage all of you to always try to be calm, cool and collected in every context, in every conflict and dispute situation you get involved in. I believe it's critically important as a community leader and a community manager to always be calm and respectful and responsible in how we react to these kinds of situations, no matter how frustrating it may be. So there are some other contributing factors that I think can sometimes inflame a situation, a conflict or a dispute. And some of these may be actually perceived by some of you as being a little bit politically incorrect at first, but I promise you that they're not. So hold fire before you start shouting at me in the comments. The first one is age. Now, I can already feel some of you typing in the comment right now. I'm not talking about age discrimination here. I believe that it's a simple fact of life that as we get older, we get wiser. The way I behaved in situations when I was 21 to the way I behaved in situations when I was 31 is very, very different. That 10 years of working with different people, meeting different types of people, working in different companies, learning lessons about how life works, have been instrumental in how I handle my own work. So when you're 21, you have fewer of those life lessons than you do when you're 31, as an example. So there's been many situations that I've seen where younger folks who have become very embittered in a particular situation, I think a lot of the reason for that is because there's not necessarily been so much of the concept of choose your battles, which is something that we often learn as we get older. And everything is very passionate and very involved. And I think that part of the reason for that is that when you're younger, you have less, you have frankly less life experience that you can pull on to help you invest in a particular situation in a particular way. So it's pretty complex. Now, it's important that we never discriminate against people based upon age or anything else. If you find that you have a conflict situation, you believe that age is maybe an influencing factor, maybe one of the people who's getting frustrated is quite young, they maybe don't know so much about how the community works in your perspective, then you shouldn't use this as a means to discount their viewpoint. You should use this as a means to help mentor them and to help give them that sense of wisdom and that sense of guidance, but in a way that isn't patronizing and isn't like the old fart telling you what to do. So that's an important element, and I've seen that the age component often plays into certain situations. It's often a particular attribute. Another one is culture. Particularly with online communities, we have people from all over the world, from different walks of life, from different backgrounds, and culture can definitely play a part. The way we do things in different countries can vary. The norms and expectations about how things work can often vary. This is again something that I think experience will teach us, but it's something to consider in your conflict situations. Different cultures may be influencing what's going on right now. The third thing is how people express opinions. As I mentioned earlier on, some people are just very upfront about their opinions, and some people are a lot less upfront about their opinions. Sometimes the most opinionated people, while they have their hearts in the right place, can frustrate other people who are less opinionated, and that can cause more conflict. And then finally, as I alluded to earlier on, in terms of wisdom, experience can play an important role. One thing I've always looked out for in communities is to learn from those people who've been around for a while. In the communities that I've been involved in, there's been people there from the very beginning, and those people have unique experiences that some of the newer folks don't necessarily have. But so often when you're newer in a community, and if you're passionate and you've got your goals and your values all set up, it can be sometimes easy to not necessarily listen to some of the tribal elders, if you will, in those particular situations. So again, there's no silver bullet, but some of these things can play a part. And again, never discriminate against people because of these things. Never discriminate anyone for their age, or which culture they come from, or the fact that they may have a particular opinion, or how much experience they've got. If you feel like there is a delta in age or experience or whatever it might be, then mentorship and guidance and a friendly voice is always the best thing to help those people fill in those blanks. The first question in my mind that you should always ask when involved in any kind of conflict or dispute mediation is there any malice at play right now? Is anybody here with malicious intent? Are they just here to screw things up, essentially? So unfortunately, in some of our communities, some people just have bad blood and they're just out there to cause havoc. They don't want to improve, they don't want to learn, they don't want to share experiences and knowledge. They just want to be shout and act like a troll or something like that. And we get trolls, which is the term that we use in technology to mean people who just want to be deliberately disrespectful. We get them everywhere. So first of all, assess whether there's malice. You'll find that some of the folks that are involved, you'll find that some of the folks that are involved are the most passionate people you'll ever meet in terms of expressing their viewpoints. It doesn't necessarily mean that they've got any kind of maliciousness at play. So don't confuse the two. In terms of how we resolve the conflict, I found that there is a useful approach that I learned a few years ago called the Johnson & Johnson approach. This is not the makers of baby powder, okay? This is something that I found myself doing beforehand in my own conflict resolution, but this approach is a useful means of describing some of these common components in how we handle a conflict situation. So I want to spin through these quickly. One is you first of all collect data. Get as much information about the situation as you can. If you go in as a mediator and don't have all the information and jump to conclusions, this is not going to serve anybody well. The second thing is that you should probe, ask questions, get an idea of what's going on, speak to the people who are involved in the conflict or the dispute and get their opinions to help build this picture. The third thing is you should never ever embarrass any of the people involved. No matter how frustrated they may be, no matter how silly they may be, don't embarrass them when they're involved in the discussion, in the mediation session. You should also, first of all, identify commonality. When you start a mediation session, figure out the areas in which these people agree on. Use that as a means to move forward. When I get involved, I always define the core mission of a particular project or a particular group, and then keep on building on consensus until you find the area where you do need to negotiate. When you find commonality, you should reinforce it and then negotiate around the differences that folks have. And when you find those differences, you should then document those adjustments. So if you find you find something that these people disagree on, document. Figure out a way in which they can find consensus. Talk about maybe working together, different approaches of working together, or resolving the particular situation, or setting expectations. And then when you find you have some agreement, document that agreement to make sure that everything's clear, and run that documented agreement past everybody first. So collect data, probe and ask questions, don't embarrass anybody, identify commonality, reinforce consensus when you have it, negotiate around differences, and document your adjustments.